Alors, bonjour et bienvenue tout le monde. Welcome, everybody. Just before we get started, we have a short video we'd like to share from Maglin, our title sponsor, and also want to recognize the Naylor Association Solutions, who is the publisher for LP Magazine and also sponsor of this webinar series.
EPD stands for Environmental Product Declaration. So this is a document that displays the environmental impacts of a product all the way through its life cycle, from raw material through end of life. It displays things like carbon footprint, energy and water usage, and waste generation. Maglin is offering them because we want to be transparent about our environmental impact. We're committed to sustainability as a core pillar of our business, and EPDs allow us to find the hot spots along our supply chain and then actively work on reducing where our impacts are highest. EPDs are an important sustainability tool. They are third-party registered and verified, so you can be sure the information is accurate and credible. They're sort of like a nutrition label for food. They help customers be informed about the products that they buy, and we can make informed choices about the products that we're creating. EPDs are a really important sustainability tool. They help our customers understand the sustainability of a product through actual data and metrics. Because they're standardized, they're really useful in comparing one product to another through their environmental footprint. EPDs are also really important for our customers who are looking to reduce the carbon footprint of a project or achieve net carbon zero, because they can see the greenhouse gases released during the manufacturing process and then make changes to reduce that at their site. Currently, EPDs contribute credits to both LEED and site certifications. Maglin offers EPDs for our bike racks and our benches. By the end of April 2022, we will have waste and recycling receptacles, tables, chairs, and cluster seating as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Hello, and welcome to the 2022 CSLA APALA Congress webinar series. This series forms part of the 2022 Congress programming, and we are pleased to be able to present these virtual events for your continued education and enjoyment. My name is Caitlin Weir, and I am a member of the Planning Committee for the CSLA APALA 2022 Congress. I would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we work, we study, and we live, as well as the Indigenous peoples who are here with us today and who come before us. Ground yourself where you are with a few deep breaths, offering thoughts of gratitude to the land and all its creatures and the Indigenous people of your place. Since this event is being held online, a singular land acknowledgement does not capture all of our group here today, but I acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. The head office of the CSLA is primarily based in Ottawa, and we acknowledge the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I reside near Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, and benefit from the unceded land of the Mi'kmaq people. We would like to thank again Maglin Site Furniture for the CSLA Congress title sponsor, and the Naylor Publications, the publisher of our award-winning Landscapes Paysage magazine, the sponsor of this Congress webinar series. Today's event is being held in the Zoom webinar format, which means that you may ask your questions after the presentation via the chat or the Q&A feature. Michelle and I will be monitoring both of them. You can see the panelists today, but you will not be able to see the other participants. However, you can chat with them using the chat platform. And this will also be posted on YouTube. The presentation will take approximately 30 minutes, and we will have 15 minutes or so at the end for discussion. The presentation will, within the next week, also be posted on our Congress webpage, where all recordings from the June event and this series are now posted. I'm now proud to present Barry Stevens, President of Stevens Solutions and Design, Inc. and 3D Wave Design, with his presentation, Making Waves, How 3D Animation is Inspiring and Educating Communities. As a Mi'kmaq Canadian Acadian First Nation community member, Barry has held positions in both management and engineering roles in advanced development laboratories, anti-submarine warfare product design, HF communications, business development, and consulting, training, product sales, and production management. At his last place of employment, he was VP of Operations. In 2001, Barry launched Stevens Solutions and Design Inc. and has supplied communications and custom electronic hardware, software designs, solutions for use in corporate communications, instruction and e-learning, security defense, government agencies, global corporations, nonprofits, and Indigenous organizations. As they focused their R&D efforts to climate change adaptation visualization software, 3D Wave Design Mapping Solutions was born. 3D Wave Design has developed close relationships with environmental, First Nations, and applied geomatics research groups, particularly in relation to wildfire and inland flood risk management and global warming-induced sea level rise prediction and simulation. 3D Wave's 3D proprietary LiDAR ingestion software visualizations have been used by Atlantic Canadian towns, municipalities, and First Nations communities to demonstrate risks and to develop engineered mitigation solutions for council and public review. Barry has sat on numerous Indigenous and non-Indigenous boards and committees, some highlights of which include the Regional Zone Chief for the Native Council of Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotia Indigenous Tourism Enterprise Network founding board member, Coastal Action Foundation board member, and Indigenous consultant for Canada's Ocean Supercluster AOSP Vitality Program. Barry resides with his wife, Mary, in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. And I will pass it to you, Barry.
Well, it sounds impressive, but it really isn't. But I know my time is short. I just want to just comment on the video I saw. It's so nice to see that people are thinking the long-term effects of actual products. There's too much of it in our disposable society. We're actually looking at the real cost of things to the environment and not just our pocketbook. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and get into this. Oh, host has disabled participant screen sharing. You're bad.
Michelle will be right on that for you.
We shall try again. Ooh, I think we're good. So, this is not good. This is better. Are we seeing a new screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I'm going to quickly go through most of this and get into what most people will be very interested in. We came at this. We were noticing that that not a lot was happening for climate mitigation in our coastal towns here in Nova Scotia. We tried to figure out a solution to help people, non-technical people, understand the implications of sea level rise and flooding. So we came at this at a totally different perspective, and we've created a tool for non-technical people to be able to go and ascertain risk and to put in different solutions that may help mitigate some of the effects of this. So interactive 3D community modeling, and our motto is observe, plan, and adapt. So as it was said, 3D Wave is born out of my company that was providing custom solutions, and we have a First Nation perspective, and we're developing our own in-house technology. So I'm going to work with different nonprofit groups along with government agencies. Recently, we're working with Sunquinich, and that is provided funding for First Nation communities here on the Atlantic seaboard. So I'm quickly going to run through all of this to get to the crux of the matter. This is all about Canadian news and flooding and the like. We all know about this. It's all across. It's truly global climate change. As Michelle said, it's pretty much undeniable. You can go into some details of how we got here, but I don't think that matters. We understood that there was an issue of people not quite getting the severity of this and not acting. And time is running out for us to act. So hearing, but not understanding. We decided to be able to look at modeling wildland fires, fluvial or river flooding, sea level rise, and storm surge. So without further ado, current standards, as you may see them when it comes to floodplain mapping. This is a typical output in which there's a color-coded gradient showing different levels of risk. Honestly, to me, it means very little. Over here is the gold standard for the federal government on fireplain mapping. This particular here where my cursor is, that's what fire looks like. This is a landmass. It's so coarsely, the resolution is so coarse that it bypasses rivers, lakes and the like. In some cases, it's a kilometer. So we said, that's not good enough. That's not helping us understand and move forward. So we got to do a bunch of research very quickly, and the National Research Council of Canada, NSERC, we've got signed collaboration agreements, and we've worked with Canadian Forestry and Natural Resources Canada at their headquarters. There's a whole list of different places we work with in different universities and different communities, but again, time is very limited. Seeing is believing. So we take LiDAR, we take the gigabytes and terabytes of LiDAR, and we process it through our own internal algorithm to reduce it down to tens of megabytes. That will allow us to create a model that will work essentially in a web app, and it will be accessible for training, communication, and planning. So LiDAR, I think I've talked about this. It works on all platforms. It works on a smartphone. It works on mobile devices. Real time. It's interactive. It's truly situational. You can adjust the tides in real time. And our resolution for woodland inventory, again, is a meter squared as compared to a kilometer squared. So communicating in 3D. Reduces the complexity of communicating risk, relatable, high-level comprehension, street-level recognition, and no formal training. Once again, this is being used by EMO people, forest fires, land use planning, people involved in planning infrastructure. I'll get into that with a few examples. Accessible planning tools, EMO, firefighting, land use. I've talked about all of that. It doesn't require you to go back to school or study or become proficient in any particular program. It's very intuitive. It's essentially, it's a web app. It's essentially a web page. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into Mahone Bay. This particular one may be of interest to some people. I've had some of your colleagues reach out to me. Are we all seeing a new screen?
Yes, we're on your website here.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to quickly go through this, and we'll have time to have questions and/or maybe even tweak it a little bit. But this came out of some work and some storms that we had here over the last couple of years. We've received funding through and support from the towns, Coastal Action, and some different banks, the RBC specifically. In this particular thing, we're going to document and show the living shoreline concept as it was designed a number of years ago, back in 2016, but had not been implemented because it wasn't completely understood by town and council. We took the report and took the engineering drawings and dropped it into this real digital elevation model. So sponsors again. Interaction, I'm using a wheeled mouse. It's touchscreen capable, phone or tablet. Interactions of right over here. You're going to watch me play with tide sliders and storm surge. We also have a brook that we can separately monitor and adjust. We built in the regional offsets for low tide because, as everyone knows who's a sailor, chart datum, the low tide is not low tide everywhere the same. So icons. We've customized this for community. We see community involvement, and we see our web app is hosting the model, but allows community engagement and involvement. A lot of the photos that I'm going to show you are from the community and the like. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you this model of our town. I'm actually in this town right now. Exists in 3D space. I'm going to very quickly go into the town center, and I'm going to remove the living shoreline concept. This is how the town pretty much exists right now, or has existed for a long, long time. I'm going to show you what a full moon tide looks like right now. It's 2.4 meters. I'll quickly zoom in here and just give you an idea of how a full moon tide can affect the town. If you come over here, you're going to see some flooding on some docks. Well, that truly exists. I'm going to jump over here and show you some pictures. This is a historical flood, but this is some of the wharfs that I've just shown you. This is a parking lot. They've got some things here because it got washed away, but here is the outline of a parking lot. A few more pictures before I jump back in. These are storm conditions. I'm going to jump out of that, but I'm going to come back. So this does happen. Now, you go and you say, well, that's the worst case. And it is. But let's just say on a full moon tide, that we have a storm surge. I don't know if any of you followed the storm surges that we were having here recently with Fiona, but depending where you were, they were as much as 2 meters. I'm just putting in a meter. So what does that mean to the town? Well, I'll give you an example. This here, these are 3 historic churches. They're the motto or the logo of the town. This is a gas station. This is the town center. This is a supermarket. These are condominiums. You can see that the waterfront and the marina are all inundated. Some of the roads here are impassable. So you go and you say, okay, that's great. You've shown me the worst case, but I'm going to show you how this has helped the town council and governance move forward. I'm going to put in the engineering shoreline. Sorry, the living shoreline. In this case here, ignore where it isn't, but you'll get to see that the particular shoreline here is protected. So the road and the church and the gas station. Now, they eventually want to do the whole area here, but what they have done is right now, from our pilot project here, they put this particular thing in here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. This little tiny section, and I'll get rid of this. This section, it was here to educate the populace of why we're no longer putting in armored rock, big rock, 6-foot rock as we have in the past. There's different examples you can click on, and you people are probably much more familiar than I am with the concept of living shoreline, but I'll quickly touch about it. This is a rock sill. It helps attenuate the waves. The waves run up, hit a burn, and come down through a pocket beach. Now, to help people understand that and get behind all of this, we've showed this as a web app that's downloadable or accessible on the town website, but I'm also going to show you a video. See if I can get it here. Are we seeing a different screen?
Yes, we just popped into the new screen.
Okay, great. I'm going to play this. There may or may not be sound, but it gives an example for people to go and try to understand the very fundamentals or the basics of how this works. It's 41 seconds, and here we go. It's very dramatic if you got wind and waves, but we'll see. And again, because time is of the essence, this particular model was paramount in getting funding and support from some private entities, a bit of government money, and the buy-in from the town. Prior to this, it's set in a report for, I'm going to say, 7 years. So this particular, I want to just quickly go and show you some of the powers of this thing. You can go and pick different areas. Just for example, this is the school. It's not in any harm's way, but you can show different facilities. We'll go here in the 3 churches. We'll just go and quickly, I'll show you why they're famous. That's in a lot of postcards. The resources that are available, weather and tide charts. I'll just click on the tide chart. We'll just see what they are. This can be used in real time to set the tidal range. Okay. What do we got here? So the tides are not full moon tides. They're 1.8. So what I showed you is an extreme, but does happen very frequently, obviously, with the tides. I'll close this. There are things for both the town, how to prepare for storms and floods, things that we're all getting quite used to. We saw some of the pictures, the videos. There's different videos embedded in there, and we can turn different aspects on, customize for its need. This big thing, this was really set up to help the town understand what risk we're at. Now, how am I doing for time?
You have just over, looks like 10 or 15 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to open up another one then. Okay, I'm very happy with this particular one because this again resulted in buy-in and a whole new approach for the town and the operations department. We actually have visualization of projected sea level rise from calculations from engineering firms, and again, I'm just going to quickly go through this interactions. We've seen this, the regional offsets, icons. Here, I'm going to go to something that is happening as we speak. They've made some further changes. This is the wastewater treatment plant. I'm going to get rid of this pop-up. If any of you are familiar with the town of Lunenburg, which many of you may not be, it is a World UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is Front Harbor. It's very deep. It's ice-free. Back here is a back harbor is very shallow and opens up to hundreds of islands. It's part of First Peninsula and Second Peninsula. This particular area for millennia was used as a portage route for Mi'kmaq people. So it's all low-lying area. And over time, the wastewater treatment plant and town dumps and different things got built in this area. So what happened, not at this storm, but a storm prior called Dorian, we had on a falling tide. So I'm just going to say, let's say 1.4, but we had a storm surge of over a meter. And you can see very quickly that the wastewater treatment plant got inundated. What happened there is the wastewater treatment plant, the electrical panels got compromised, the biomass got compromised, and effectively raw sewage had to be pumped into a shallow, slow flushing harbor. There were areas over here on the land that got flooded. It's all documented. I have pictures of that. But you go and you say, okay, when we show this to the operations people, what's self-evident to you and I right now was immediately evident to us when we created the model of the operations. The issue is that with a hydrodynamic amplification in Back Harbor, let's take the up a little bit. You can quickly see that it's the backflush is coming through the culvert drainage system. So they put drainage controls on this, and they did that within a week. Some of the stuff that they started were inflatable bags. They've been putting in burns in which they can control the water that goes out and the water that comes in. But why is this so important? Let me show you why this is important. Because prior to this was their main focus: storm surge. I'm going to show you what the real problem is. Based on engineering, the latest measurements from IPCC, the sea level rise in the year 2100 is 1.77 meters. 100-year storm event, really bad. I'm going to hit simulate and watch this. This is actually shocking. So if you go and you look at this, you can see that's almost gone through. The areas here, Lunenburg Fire Department, inundated. Which is a new building. Blue Nose Academy, which is their high school, a new building, is inundated. You're going to see the Civic Center, the hockey rink, the curling rink, places you might want to pitch tents or set up type of comfort stations. They're all inundated. Gas stations, some of the some of the industry in town, all inundated with water. And if we just zoom out a little bit, you'll see that the bypass road it has a problem. This is a big deal. And you go, okay, well, you showed me the worst case. Let's go and be a bit more reasonable. Let's go sea level rise 2100, but a 10-year storm event, which we actually get every 2 years now. And I'm going to hit simulate and watch the water levels change. They moved ever so little. The issue for Lunenburg is that all of the new infrastructure was built on later dates because the old people knew that this was wet, probably used it for farming, and now because it was not occupied, a lot of infrastructure has been put on here. So right now, all of the infrastructure that would be required or needed in times of duress, including the school at the plate for comfort stations and the fire department, industry, all inundated. And this was not understood, even though the documents were in their hands for 7 to 8 years. this was not understood. And I'll also show you what it means to some of the small communities. Very picturesque town. It's a fishing town, but very quickly you can see the roads and the community are going to be isolated. To that end, you can see that this is going to wash through, but if any of you know of the brand name Highliner Seafoods or Highliner Foods, this is the Highliner plant. At one time was the world's biggest fish plant. Well, that's going to wash through. That's at risk. The town employment that keeps, I'll say, hundreds of people employed is actually, again, built on a floodplain. So, again, you saw some of the pictures. I can show you pictures of islands, but again, the resources for downloading, you can have documents. Some of the documents that I referred to are available for download. I'm quickly going to close this, and I'm going to come back to my slideshow. We've done modeling for wind farms, terrestrial and offshore. Some of this is our fire modeling. We don't have time for that. We've been in the news and Canadian Geographic Magazine, CBC, some testimonials from operations and design people, and some mayors. That's our website. And thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing. How'd I do for time? Did I make you proud?
You were so quick.
Oh.
I've just been given the okay. If you wanted to continue for another 13 minutes, if you wanted to show us some of your fire mapping, we have time for that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I've got the okay, I'll come back to that then. I say I will. I have to come back to you. And I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. And we've seen this, but I'm going to just simply, simply go back. I'm going to show you some of the basic stuff here, and I'm going to, so we have advanced and rigorized our fire modeling, but I want to show you some of the really basic stuff where we first presented. It doesn't have all the variables, but it's easy to understand without a lot of background. It's been advanced. It is to the latest standards. We've taken all the formulas, but here we'll show you what got us in the game. Okay, we should see a new screen open up here. New screen, correct?
Correct. It's loading.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through that again. Start. So I'm going to just go through this again quick. So more of the same, wheeled mouse, sliders, all good. Icons, this is a very early map for us. We've sort of touched on that, community bio for this particular First Nation, wildfire visualization, which I'll walk through, okay? We base this on Byram's fire intensity formula, but the newer versions have all of the updated dynamic woodland inventory and fire index in them also. So without further ado, I'm just going to show you some of the power of this. This particular little tiny piece of reserve land is right here. And you go, how can that even be a reserve? Well, this was all native land and it got taken away. So, and the day before the Truth and Reconciliation, just realized that this was actually at one time hundreds of hectares. So you go and you say, well, that's a river and that floods. Well, sometimes it gets up as much as 3 meters of flood. And you go, well, that doesn't seem to be affecting that land. Well, let's take off the terrain. Let's take off the elevation of the trees. Very soon, you see that land does get flooded, and houses were starting to be built here. And they changed the whole design and put up some berms and all of this, but this was not recognized. So let's get on to the fire. Okay, this is not Indigenous land, but it will affect our community. And I'm going to go back and take off the reserve land. I'm going to take off the terrain, put that back on. I'm going to set a fire. Again, this is based on real science, but when we made some assumptions, I assumed when we programmed this that it was mature fir, and that it was an August situation for the tree sap and the like. So there's some assumptions made. Our other maps are all based on dynamic input. So I'm going to play with the wind direction and strength. I'm going to pick a location. I'm going to throw a location here at compass rose. The wind strength, direction, you can see it move. Okay, north, south, and all of that. I'm going to put the wind from the north. The wind strength, you can see the difference in the amplitude and the color code of the arrow. Dryness, you'll see me play with the fire, and simulation speed, just to move this along. Because believe it or not, when fires first start off, and if the woods is wet, the fire progresses fairly slow. It's quite different once it gets a critical mass and it starts preheating the wood before it gets into it. But initially, it can be slow. So we at the simulation speed here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to take the dryness and I'm going to take it down a little bit. I'm going to try not to make the fire go out, but I'm going to play the wind strength and just see if that picks up a little bit. You'll see the intensity growing a little bit, and it's starting to move south. Now, I'm going to play with the dryness. Now, this actually takes in the preheating of the woodland before it gets there, but I'm going to go and make this a bit drier. And you see very quickly it catches. Now, this is not, and I'm going to take down the strength and slow this down a little bit. And I'm going to play with the wind direction. I'm going to drive it towards the First Nations land. Okay. So you're going to see it spread out. It is going to start moving towards the east, but still go south. You can pause this at any time. Now, we've created this for a number of First Nation communities and delivered it to them. And what they're doing is they're looking at putting in fire breaks. They've run tabletop scenarios. They had historical forest fires that they ran the models on, and they've all come back saying, yes, this is very representational. How am I doing for time?
You're good. You still have 8 minutes.
Well, I think I'm going to have to sing. Let's go, and I'm just going to close this up. Usually at this point in time, maybe I might like to finish now, but people come back and ask me to load these and then have me adjust things to answer their questions. Can we do that?
That's okay. We can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you back the screen.
Perfect.
And I'd rather answer questions and or go back to the maps to people to say, well, do this or do that, so they see it actually work.
I like that plan.
Okay.
So just a reminder, everyone, you can put your questions in the question and answer or in the chat. Either way, Michelle and I will be able to see them and we can ask them to Barry. In the meantime, though, I would like to start with one of my questions.
Okay.
So you and I have had a few different chats on the phone, which has been lovely. And I was curious to know what you found to be the most difficult thing with your work in 3D Wave, but also what the most rewarding thing is.
Well, the most difficult thing, I'll be honest, is the government and the bureaucrats. They're still working in 2D and yesterday's standards. Our stuff is rigorized, but there's a reluctance to accept it because the legislation and standards haven't been written. That's very frustrating, knowing that. And this is where it's very exciting for me when we give it to the end users that aren't bound by, I'll say, the bureaucracy of legislation. They actually have a problem and they want to move forward. When they run the scenarios and say, you're telling me that if we do this, we protect our infrastructure. Some of the things we've done is we put in GPS measurements for electrical panels and lift stations, and they know exactly when the lift stations and what conditions, and they go and they waterproof those or move them, and or they put in culvert systems or the living shoreline. Rather than having a report setting on a shelf for a decade, that to me is exciting. Because right now, most of the people that make these decisions, whether they're politicians or let's pick on a town. There many times small towns are retired people. They're not engineers. They may be retired school teachers or shopkeepers or lawyers, but they're the ones that say yes or no. They're the ones that go and seek the funding. And what I found is if you give technical information to non-technical people, I tell you what they'll do. They'll do what every one of us does. When we have to make a decision, we don't know what to do, we make none. We effectively make none. And that's not an option. The tides keep coming up. So when I see people going and educating communities about forest fires, and all of a sudden they said, they've gone in one particular community, they've gone from putting out like a dozen fires last year to putting out only 2, since they educated the public of how much it puts their community at risk burning in this particular gravel pit. And I know that has affected change. When I see living shorelines and grasses being planted, that excites me to no end, because other than that, we're in a vulnerable position. We have to adapt. Humans are like cockroaches and raccoons, right? We're very adaptive, but sometimes I think we're awfully stupid. How's that?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's so nice to hear that. Just watching your work get implemented is one of the highlights of what you do. I know watching the Mahone Bay pilot project get put in. I visited Ontario for a week and came back, and it was there. And it's been so wonderful seeing it take root. And I haven't seen it since Fiona passed through, but hopefully it's still rooted well.
Yeah, it seems to still be there. And honestly, I'll take a significant amount of credit. Of course, Coastal Action were behind it. Of course, that Coastal Action put it through. But when the funding agencies saw the maps I created outside of that stream, they said, we want more of that. And once they saw what we were doing, they told Coastal Action, you write us a proposal with these guys, we'll fund you. And we'll help you put the pilot project in. So we were a part of that in a significant way. And if that moves us towards helping protect towns and getting people to change their mindset and be more proactive, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, I'm assuming, say, some of your people here might have ways of figuring out how to absorb more water, have less rapid runoff, do different types of burns or bridges or whatever. So you can show people to get people to actually make informed decisions rather than acting out of fear and emotion. Show them what it looks like. And if they go and say, well, that's foolish, well, maybe it is. And if they look at that and say it's not so bad, and we implement it, that's a good thing.
Yes. So we have a question.
Oh.
So the audience is wondering how long it takes you to make a town model.
Oh, that depends on the town. And for us to make a model, to actually make a model, it's not that long. But sometimes it takes a while to get the town to understand what they want from it, right? If the question is, how long does it take us to ingest the LiDAR and create a 3D model and drop it in a web app? Not very long. How long is very long? If ask this person if they're writing a check, because I can deliver them something in a couple of weeks. Money talk.
There's your answer.
Money talks. We're currently working on 4 First Nation communities as we speak. We're going to be starting up 2 and delivering them within a month.
That's impressive.
Oh yeah, we are impressive.
You're welcome.
Well, you see, that technology that we're talking about, we've been working on it for 5 years. And so we've refined it. And what we've focused on is the ability to keep the digital elevation, the resolution, and to make it somewhat automated. So, I mean, when we say we're doing that, I mean, the amount of computation time is been reduced, but it doesn't take a lot of human intervention. You just go, and then it churns for a bit. Much like rendering a movie, you can render a scene. So we've come at it from that way, from a communication or an educational point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come at it. I have an education in applied science, obviously, but we came at it from how do we make this engaging, entertaining, and useful, right? So where's your check? To ask them where their checkbook is.
I'm sure you'll get a lot of checks in the mail. So another question, what is the typical format for showing your results to the public? And the second part, is this done by the clients or do you help them with the presentations?
I can talk about some of the ongoing relationships that we have. Typically, if I'm dealing with an end user, I present it to town council, and quite often virtually, or the First Nation community. With Coastal Action Foundation, what I do is I support them in doing demos to different communities and different sectors. They typically, if they're into public education, they'll put out ads and we'll have virtual, we have hundreds of people show up, and then I run this through. Some groups maybe for government, some may be for the public, some may be for what's the other? Well, yeah, I'll say people like yourself, professionals, right? And the engineering and the science groups. So we support our clients as they see fit. In many cases, I just run through even with the governance and the operations. And of course, if EMO people want to, in the early days, they would, whenever a storm would come in, they'd say, "Hi, can we run through this together?" I said, "Absolutely, let's do it."
Real time.
Yeah.
Real time results. We've got a few questions coming in.
Okay.
So I get to choose now.
Oh.
This one just came in. Are there ways or plans to be able to visualize / compare various adaptation strategies like dunes, wetlands, seawalls?
There are no plans because no one has asked us to do them. Okay. What we're able to do is, for example, if we go back to the Mahone Bay example, if you had an engineered plan, right? Now we could make it that you could have a slider and play with the roads if you wanted to, but you'd have to specify that you'd want to play with the roads to raise and lower them. But we have the ability, as you saw, how I was able to put in the pilot project, the full plan. If you have those engineered drawings, we can drop those in, and then we can run the scenarios of the water levels. Right? We can also do like we did in the rendered video, but it's situational. What we did is we chose to take a 1.5 meter at at low tide, and just run it up so people could see the wave action. We can do that. We don't consider ourselves the technical authorities at all. We consider ourselves the communication specialists. There are people that are a lot brighter than us that have a lot of great ideas that need help or need tools to help communicate those to the public. So we actually start doing something rather than just, climate change is horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. And do nothing.
Follow up to that. It sounds like this is from one of our attendees. It sounds like this should / will become the standard in due course, especially for coastal communities. Is this a unique system, or are there other like systems out there?
Well, anything that I tell you, it will be a snapshot in time. As soon as I tell you something, you'll go click on a website and you'll find that someone's uploaded something. But to my knowledge, no. We are alone in the fact that we have taken the LiDAR and maintain the digital elevation models, and the file size is so small that it's interactive. Now, there are some things like Clive and the University of PEI and different places that say they're doing the same thing, but they run the scenarios, or they require supercomputers. We are the only people that we're aware of that you can run this on a phone, and it's dynamic, tied up, tied down, and all of that. Will it become the standard? I just got discouraging news from my province. I think I mentioned this. They literally said, after I've had meeting after meeting, wondering why this has been so slow to move forward in some sectors. We're too far ahead. They're still. They just finished the 2D standards for the national floodplain mapping, and they came out and they're already obsolete. Right? If any of you know about armored or ruggedized computers that you may use in data collection, when you buy that thing, it is 2 generations behind. So we're seeing the same thing now. Fortunately for us, end users, whether they're towns, they can choose what they want, or the First Nation communities can choose what they want. So we're having early adopters. the problem is changing policy,
Yeah.
right?
Slow to change.
Oh, dear God. Cold molasses going uphill.
So we do have another question. Do you see the communities making changes in their emergency response plans, particularly if fire halls and public centers are in the flood zone? And a follow-up, are policies changing about any new public building approvals for construction that you've seen?
That's an exceptionally good question. And the answer is yes, kind of. When they get these, when people realize that there's a problem, let's say we go back to Lunenburg, the fire hall's already there. Okay, the fire hall cost, let's say millions of dollars to build. They're not going to change that right away. Okay, land use planning, it is being used to reinforce or enforce land use for private homes. Because there are setbacks now here in Nova Scotia, and some people say, "Well, why can't I build here? This is blah blah." And then people will show how vulnerable it is, right? There is a bit of concern about tax assessments, but when people say, well, the people are going to want a reduction of their taxes or this, or they won't be able to get insurance. Well, I tell that to the people of Newfoundland. The people in different corners there, they got flooded and they're not covered for insurance. They thought they were covered for water ingress through drainage, but not overland water. So the truth is the truth, whether you like it or not. So people have to if someone wants to build a house on a floodplain, they have to realize they may not be able to get insurance and they are at risk. So it is happening slowly. Is it being used for firefighting training in First Nation communities? Yes. Have they cut any fire breaks? I don't know. I know they're talking about it, but once again, running the scenario and say, "Oh my God, we're vulnerable from these prevalent winds," and them actually going and cutting the fire breaks, there's a delay. Is it moving that way? It is. Yeah.
That's good. That's good news, I think. Hearing that there's some people who are implementing the changes from these.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But for me to say that all people are doing it evenly, I can't. But I can tell you that the reports that said the same thing sat unread for 7 to 8 years. When somebody has this in their hands for 7 or 8 months, ground has been moved, right? Policies have changed, right? Electrical panels have been pulled. They have acted on it because it's understandable and relatable and actionable, right? You don't have to guess what 1.86 meters means. I'll show you, right? That's what it means.
Information.
Yeah, it's relatable information and actionable. Like I said, one of the towns that we did, they were all concerned about all their pump stations. I said, you go out there with a GPS unit, you show me where it is, and you tell me the height, and I will put it in there, and I'll show you the ones that are vulnerable. And I tell you what they did. There were some that were exceptionally vulnerable. They went and rewired them, and they moved them up. Mm-hmm. And they did that within weeks. They just said, well, why wouldn't we move that thing up, another 2 feet to be with the rest? Because that's all of our other systems are fairly robust, and this one's not. Mm-hmm. It's a no-brainer. Fix it. And they didn't know.
Yeah, and towns, municipalities, governments, First Nations communities, they can then target those places that are most vulnerable with their money instead of trying to guess where their vulnerabilities may lie.
The town of Lunenburg did not realize that sea level rise was their biggest foe. They thought storm surge. They were thinking short term, right? And the other thing of it is, with this, the towns, once they can look at this and see the vulnerability, then they come back to people like you and they say, we're vulnerable. Can we somehow put in a grass burn that will protect? And they won't know that. And this can allow them to go seek expertise, action, or run a scenario to get town buy-in, because nobody wants to go and see, for example, the waterfront changed. Now, but of course, if we don't change it, it may change itself through erosion. I have pictures here that show you that islands have gone away. You're very familiar, the one off of West Davers Beach. I might have mentioned that before. There's a lighthouse on it, or a light beacon. There used to be a lighthouse and two homesteads out there. Mm-hmm. When I was young, there was a barn and buildings and 2 houses. There's nothing. The shore frontage with storm surge will change whether we change it or if Mother Nature changes it.
Very true. I think a lot of people particularly with living shorelines, don't realize that the shoreline is a living entity. It's not meant to stay in one place. It's supposed to move and ebb and flow and change.
I really see the living shoreline as an absolute asset to the town of Mahone Bay, putting aside it protecting the town and attenuating waves. Now, when you go there, it's large rock. It's like up and down. You can't access it. Kids can't get to the waterfront. For example, if you had a canoe or kayak, throw it down over the rocks, right? No, the public will be able to walk down to the water's edge, right? It will be more accessible. There'll be more wildlife there. The grasses, there'll be life. It will go back to the way it was before we started putting in these armored rocks that drag out the earth and the sand and make it void of life. So it's totally natural. It's a great way to go.
So I also come from a technical science background before I jumped into landscape architecture. So I'm curious how you build your models. Obviously, you start with the LiDAR data from the area, which is available through the province of Nova Scotia. But then the other information that you put in there as control slides, how do you go about that?
Well, I'll answer them as directly as I can. So, as you know, we take the LiDAR, we create a point cloud, we do a wireframe, and we change the resolution of that depending on the altitude and the closeness. We take the high resolution ortho photos and we drape them down over that to give you the visuals. Now, if you look at them aside, you won't see windows because the pictures were taken directly down. So then we just simply go and we reference everything to the LiDAR information, the metadata, and chart datum. So we go and figure out where our tides are, and we apply that. Now, when you talk about flooding, our models are somewhat simplistic, but they're no more simplistic than anyone else's models. So they're typically bathtub. There's no wave run up. We can do wave run up, but it's not situational. Again, we could go and show you what a wave would look like we did with a short video. When we do the fire, what we do is there's different sources of information. Of course, we have the elevation. We all know the fire goes uphill quicker than it goes down. The wind is obvious. We pick in free space in our model where the wind comes from and the intensity. It's all calibrated to knowns. We use our own software to ingest and create the models, and we use our own web app to display it. But we do use animation tools to create some of this, including open source Blender, if that's familiar to you, right? Yeah. So we do use Blender in some regards. So if you're not familiar with Blender, you can do real world physics in that, right? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you. At least for me. Hopefully there's other tech nerds on here as well.
Okay.
So that is closing up on the time that we have.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Barry, for this presentation. It's been a pleasure, as always, having a back and forth with you.
Yeah. Well, it's truly my pleasure, because what I'm really hoping to do, of course, I'm trying to earn a living, and this is my son and my baby. We've nurtured this, we pushed it along. But when I actually see positive action occurring and people are making changes, because there's nothing more maddening when you go when you go outside and you see nobody doing anything. When we have a storm come in and we're totally hopeless. When a little bit of planning and or legislation and understanding of community members goes a long way. Then I've succeeded. I'm just at a loss at how little the public how much the public feels incapable of doing anything. Most people just throw their hands up. Well, it's going to happen. Well, yes, it is, but we can make it painful or painless. And the sooner we start, the sooner we plan, the sooner we realize this, the sooner we make judgments, decisions, the better off we'll be. I'd rather go and move buildings back than go every 10 years and chase oil tanks around the harbor, right? We have to realize that these things can happen, and and not be shocked when they do. We have to anticipate them. We're all going to die. Storms are going to come and go. We've got to accept it and deal with it.
Exactly. But maybe we can deal with it with like a little bit of hope.
Well, it all comes down to us being proactive, and your organizations such as yourself, you're leading the way. You have to engage people, design solutions. I don't know much about the landscape solutions when it comes to runoff, but I know the permutation of pavements, or the lack of permutation of pavements, are a big issue now. And I never realized how much water runoff was a big deal until I visited Texas and Dallas. It was at Dallas. I could not believe the size of the culvert systems and the drains that they had. And, I said, what's this all about? Well, that's flash flooding. And I go, well, we're going to get flash flooding because our temperatures are getting warmer, and we're not set up for that. Our culverts are, 12 inches or 18 inches. People, again, like yourself, you're going to help lead the way. So anything I can do to encourage and or be part of that, I'm there.
Your support is greatly appreciated for us. Coming up behind you. So thank you to everyone on this call for all of your wonderful questions and for tuning in. And for anyone watching this video afterwards, thank you for coming and viewing us later. On behalf of the CSLA and APOLA Congress Planning Committee, we are delighted that you were able to be here today. The next webinar in our series will be held at 3 p.m. Ontario time, and it will be Sonia, Eliza, Minucci, and Matthew talking about cultivating landscape literacy through new models of practice. And that is on October the 13th. And just kidding, it's at 1 p.m. So that's October 13th at 1 p.m. for our next webinar. So thank you, everyone. And it was a pleasure being with you again, Barry.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Merci tout le monde et bon après-midi. Thanks everybody for being with us today.